We'll start with recruitment, which I'll go into, and then Catherine is going to tackle engagement and assessment. Within these buckets, we're going to include some examples and how they apply, how to apply some of these best practices. Some of you all might already be doing that. Great, but we're also hoping there might be a few ideas that you can possibly incorporate in the future. So with that, let's go into recruitment, which when you think about in the springtime, I don't know about y'all, but when I was a partner, I didn't really think of springtime as a recruitment time, at least when I first started my program. And then I realized there was still some room and capacity. And I was like, oh, should probably fill that up and reach my match goal. That was just as a partner. As a PSM, we know working with our various partners, a lot of times there are institutions where you have new folks who join in the spring. You want to make sure that they have an opportunity to join this program. Or maybe you already have a set list of folks. They don't change from fall to spring, but you're looking at, I'd like to get a dozen more matches here. How can I reinvigorate? How can I really pump things up for the spring and fill in those spots? So one of the first things that you can do is go to your partner dashboard. When you log into your partner dashboard, there's a couple of features that help you get started in terms of, well, where am I at? How much room do I have to go to my match goal, my match cap, which you can talk with your partner success manager specifically on those details. But what you can start doing in the meantime is looking at the mentee funnel, which is that photo on the bottom right-hand side. When you go to your homepage in your partner dashboard, you'll see if you scroll down on the bottom left, there are mentee and mentor funnels, which hint, hint, I'll get at this for mentor recruitment as well, because it kind of double dips there. Looking at that funnel, you can see all the folks that have been invited. These are indicating the participants that you sent to Mentor Collective to upload and then activate. You might have invited some other folks that might not be included in there, but these are the folks that you've at least asked Mentor Collective to upload into the system. From there, you'll see registered, matching survey, and then matched. Generally, the group that folks will tackle, you might start with matching survey. Why? Because they're one step away from being eligible to be matched. So if you go to that and you look to the other photo right behind it, there is in the participants tab ways to filter and figure out, well, who are these mentees that maybe did almost everything, but they just need to complete that 2-minute matching survey. If you go there, you can filter and say mentee, registered, and then another filter that says did not complete matching survey. Boom, what will happen is you'll get that specific list of students. And in the top right-hand corner, there's a green button there in that gray picture. That is the export feature. When you click on that, it'll ask you, hey, do you want to export just this group of students? You're like, yeah, these are the people who I want to reach out because we still have some spots open. They're so close to filling it. Let's recruit them. And then you can export that list so you can have more targeted recruitment that way. A step further, let's say you have a lot more spots to go through and you already addressed the matching survey, folks. Great. You can do the same exercise for registered. The only difference is when you go to the filter feature is that instead of for the registered, you can actually just go into invited. So if you want to address folks who haven't even registered for the program yet, you can just go to invited, and then that's going to give you a super massive list. But that gives you all the folks who haven't even started into the program. So those are just a couple ways that you can at least identify and target who those populations are from who you've already established and are already in the system. Can we go to the next slide, which should dive into, if you're still far from goal, what are some other groups that you can possibly tackle, such as subgroups? So when Catherine and I reached out to our awesome PSM team, we asked them this question of like, when you talk with partners, what's often the topic of discussion, and it is identifying these subgroups. I'll use a great example. I won't identify the institution, but this institution has notified me in our meetings that there's like 8 subgroups out there, and they're trying to get buy-in. And gradually, they've actually done a really good job of getting 1 group, 2 group, 3 groups. And then they've been using what we call our institutionally provided data function, or IPD for short. You may have heard that with your PSM. If you have not, bring it up to them if it's applicable. But they've utilized IPD to identify these subgroups who they gradually sent our way through partner support and said, hey, can we upload these students and identify them as X, right? So if you're like, now that I have these subgroups that are being identified on campus, they haven't been invited yet, or maybe they have been, and you'd like to tackle them again, you go back to that participants feature, go through filters, and then you can actually filter and look for those subgroups. When you do that IPD feature, it gives you its own filter. So that makes it even easier for you to see the statuses of folks. So for this example, with our practice account, you'll see in this subgroup, which is transfer students for this particular program, you can see there were 3 transfer students that were uploaded into our system. 2 of them have registered, but have not completed a matching survey, and 1 of them have not registered at all. So now you understand the journey of each of the folks who are in these subgroups by using this filter. This will help you be really methodical and strategic with how you want to go about recruiting these students here in January and through about mid-February. All right. So that's that for mentees. I'll dive into mentors, and this slide will be probably my quickest slide, and you'll hear me talk the least about, because similar to our mentees, mentors can also be identified through the mentor funnel and through the participants tab where we can do all those filters. The one thing to note and to remind folks is the required training portion. That's the main difference between mentors and mentees, right? Which most of you probably already know. Sorry, as my wife says, you're probably mansplaining. I don't mean to. I just want to make sure we all remember that that's there. So one of the recommendations we have as PSMs is talk with us if there are alternate ways where maybe I've had a partner identify the group who needed a complete training. And what they did was they hosted a Zoom webinar to be like, hey, let's go through the training together. And then what they did with me particularly was, hey, Andrew, here's a list of students, 30 mentors who had not completed the training. They came to our training. Can you mark them as training completed? From there, that's 30 new mentors. They average about 4 mentee capacity each. That's 120 new spots available for these mentees who are waiting. That can be really effective. If that is not feasible for you on campus, another example a partner gave me was they identified, and I'll get to it here, student leaders and other students who they can make exceptions towards. So for instance, I had a partner reach out to me and say, hey, Andrew, here are 20 student government leaders that I have. I know they've registered and they've taken the matching survey. Unfortunately, maybe they need better time management skills. This is what the partner told me. But in the meantime, we want to do them a solid. We really want them to be matched with somebody. Can we do that? And so certainly I was like, well, your wish is my command within reason, but in that aspect, you're not going to break anything. Let's do that. So that's a way where you can utilize sort of these tools to figure out, oh, some of these students, maybe we can have them bypass that and give them another training, or maybe they've received other training. You're like, we can make an exception. I will note that I recommend every mentor to take the training. As a former partner myself, I've seen the material and it's super effective and it helps mentors use our dashboard effectively and to be really effective mentors. However, we do recognize there are some exceptions and some circumstances that yield the examples that I brought up. But I just want to note that it's still really important for them to have training and to be familiarized with the dashboard. Please consult with your PSM on those options, but we'd love to work with them there. Otherwise, you can, again, if we go into the next slide, talk about recruiting those mentors. So identifying student leaders. I gave the example of student government. I received another example of student leaders within clubs. So in a past life, I was a student life coordinator and I oversaw 400 plus clubs at a large public grant institution. So in that case, I probably would have had a list of all these leaders, and I've actually had a partner do this, and we were able to give them targeted messaging. So you can actually work with your PSM and also partner support to establish some custom specific recruiting messages. So what I did in that example with the club leaders was, hey, so-and-so, thank you for serving as a club leader. If you're looking for more ways to impact your, institution community, here's a way, and then to sign up and whatnot. So that's worked in the past. Another thing that I did both as a partner and working as a PSM was incorporating recent alumni. So my first year at Rice, we were purely just a peer-to-peer program. eventually we realized as we were expanding the program and we're incorporating more matches to our goal, we were like, our current student population is not going to be able to make that happen as mentors. So we actually expanded it to recent alumni, and we identified alumni who graduated within 5 years um, or so. And that proved really, really effective for two things. One, it got them excited to kind of give back to campus, and it was for free for them. And two, oftentimes, because of that excitement, allowed them to come back to campus, find other ways to get back and to feel connected. So there's a lot of really cool aspects that come out of that. And it also kind of gives students a unique perspective of someone who still is familiar with the environment and infrastructure of campus, but can also say, hey, here's how my time at Sacramento State, which is my alumni, this is how my time at Sac State has applied to me now, like as a graduate. So it's kind of a unique perspective. So again, consult with your PSM based off of how your program is structured, if that would be an applicable option, but that has worked for several partners, including myself when I was a partner. And then last but not least, um, you might be sitting here and be like, all right, Andrew, I'm trying to get to the good stuff. One, because Catherine's awesome and is a better presenter than you, but two, I've already hit my match goal. So I'm done, right? Not necessarily. There's always a learning opportunity from this. You could still utilize some of these recruiting practices and identifying practices to continue promoting your program. Maybe this is because I'm in Texas and I like using my skillet, but strike when the iron's hot. When that skillet is hot, it's time to cook, right? And so keep it hot, keep it going, keep it relevant. I've worked with programs where they took their foot off the gas, and then the very next year, the recruitment cycle was wonky, and we got like half the signups we did in the first year. Why? They weren't building off of that momentum. So definitely consider these ideas of continuing promoting your program. Even if people haven't signed up this year, they could sign up for next year. So consider that moving forward. Use this time to evaluate recruitment and plan for next year. Talk about what went well, what didn't go well. What were some of these practices that could continue to strengthen your program further? And then learn from the recruitment cycle, which I'll actually pause here and hand over to Catherine, because momentarily she's actually going to talk about some of these features such as exports and whatnot that can help identify this. But now that y'all have conquered the recruitment phase, Catherine, let's dive into engagement phase. What do you got for us?
Thank you, Andrew. That was a great overview and a great reminder that just because the fall is over does not mean we have to be done engaging new students. So I'm going to talk about over the next couple of slides some of the data that we collect with some recommendations on how to leverage it, make it actionable. What you're seeing here are a couple of graphs that I've pulled directly from a partner dashboard, as well as a screenshot from a micro survey. So I'm going to get into the details of all of that in just a second. But most likely, many of you launched your programs at the beginning of the academic year. So we hopefully have a couple of months worth of rich data to already look into. So I'm going to start by saying that we already have a lot available to you right now in your dashboard. And we'll talk about different ways that we can collect even more. But we're going to start with three main buckets of data. So we've got conversation data, flag data, and then some micro survey data. And again, we'll get into each of these individually, starting with our conversation data. So again, hopefully this sounds familiar to you if you've been working with a program for a little while, but it's an expectation that our participants, mentors, and mentees will manually log a connection point or conversation that they have with one another in their participant dashboard. And when they log that conversation or connection point, they let us know a little bit about what they've talked about and what the subject matter was. That information is valuable for a lot of different reasons. Mainly, it ensures to us that we know participants are connecting and engaging with each other, that the mentorship piece is actually working and in action. But the second has a lot more, I think, layers to it. It also shows us what is most important and top of mind to students throughout the year. We can use this data in a variety of different ways. I think what comes to mind first and foremost is we can use this to be proactive with our engagement and event planning. It can do a little bit of myth busting. So if you have a sense that students are talking about financial aid during a particular time of the year, but really what we're seeing is they're talking about how to navigate internship experience, that can help redirect and guide where you're allocating your resources and which campus partners that you'll want to collaborate more strategically with. The second bucket of data that I want to talk about is flag data. So mentors in that training that Andrew mentioned before are uniquely trained to, or specifically trained, I should say, on how to identify when a mentee might need some additional support or to escalate a particular issue that the student has brought to their mentor. The flag is then reported out to you as the admins. Hopefully you're all familiar with our flag emails and the flag feature in the dashboard. But this data is also really helpful, of course, to address individual issues, but to look at it in aggregate and again, see what those trends are. The two key features that I love about these graphs, or the one main feature of the two graphs, I should say, are that they're all interactive. So you can click into these graphs, you can click into each of these slices. So it's probably a little too small to see on this screen, but if you were looking at your partner dashboard, you could see what the labels are for each of the categories that we're seeing. So financial concerns, roommate conflicts, interview stress, things like that. You can click into that slice and see who is talking about what. And then we also have some graphs over time too, so you can see at what point in the year particular issues are most prevalent. When you click into that graph, there are a lot of things that you can do with that data. Andrew mentioned exports. So every data set that we have, when you're in the filter, when you're in the participant tab, you can export that into a CSV file. That file will have many different fields. Perhaps the most actionable is that it includes email addresses and phone numbers, so we can reach out to these students specifically with relevant resources. And/or we can send these lists to, again, relevant campus partners that I think that would be, that they would find value in having that information to understand who can they reach out to, who is their target audience, how can they then plan for different types of events and resources that they'll be building out. So it's really twofold. We can reach out to these individuals directly, and then we can share that with your campus partners so they're better equipped with who needs what when. And the third bucket is actually, if you can stay on that previous slide, sorry, that third bucket is our microsurvey data. So that is not something that we automatically collect in the same way that we get with our conversation and our flag data. Microsurveys, and I will say we did, thank you, Jen. Jen just put the recording in the chat. We recently had a whole webinar dedicated to microsurveys, so I won't get into it in too much detail here. I definitely encourage you to watch that recording and talk to your partner success manager about how to leverage microsurveys. But it's a way for us to capture quick data, 1 to 2 questions from our participants. So it's a pop-up that shows up in their participant dashboard, and then those answers are routed directly to your exports tab in the dashboard. So the example that I have here in the slide is, would you be interested in attending an in-person networking event on campus? This is a great way for you to gauge, before you pour resources and time and book space and all of that, are your students thinking they would attend? We can then follow up with these students. If we get maybes, we can then understand, okay, we can ask them to understand what is the barrier, what would make you come, what would be a better option instead, those types of things. And we can really leverage the data that we're collecting from conversation reports, from flag notices, to guide what types of follow-up that we're looking to secure. So do we want to understand what students need more of? Do we want to see, have you reached out to this particular resource? If you're having financial aid concerns, have you tried to go to the financial aid office? Are you having trouble making an appointment? What can we do to close that gap and really reduce the barrier to you getting what you need to be successful? I'll pause there, let everyone digest. I don't know if it's possible to come off me. I know we're in webinar mode, but maybe you can put it in the chat. If not, has anyone launched a micro survey this year yet? Or do we have a use case that you've found for looking at some of this data? Rose, you have, amazing. Great. Okay, well, let that marinate. Think about a potential in-person event. I love that. I've done a lot of micro surveys with my partners on gauging availability for in-person events, what time of day would be best, what day of the week. I work with a couple of career programs where mentors are alumni, so they're not necessarily local to campus. So we've done outreach to mentors. Would you be willing to come to campus or participate in a virtual event? Things like that. I also worked with a school to use a microsurvey to get t-shirt sizes. So we wanted to get t-shirts for mentors. And this was the best way to get a sense of what sizes to order so we didn't overbuy. That was really effective. And when students are going to get something, they're definitely more likely to fill it out. Um, awesome. To advertise virtual workshops for students, it's a great use case, Heidi. The other thing, you can leverage a micro survey even just as a notice. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a question. It could be a pop-up like, hey, reminder, there's open office hours at the library on whatever date. So there's a bunch of different ways that we can do that. And again, then that information, it pulls into an export. So all the micro surveys that you will launch throughout the year will be in your exports tab. So when we're looking at evaluating for impact, evaluating for trends, all of that will live collectively there. So we can add that to our list of resources. Okay, awesome. If you think of other things or think of other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We can definitely continue to come back to that. Awesome. Okay. So cross department collaboration, this is a big one. I think one of the things that I really want to drive home is that I'm sure all of you know this, your institutions are already pouring so many resources into existing initiatives, existing departments, existing activities. And we want to ensure that students are making the most of what's already available to them. And so I want to help really guide you all to look at the data that's coming in through through the engagement data to understand how we can better share that out with campus partners. We can include them more intentionally in the initiatives that are a part of your mentorship program, and ensure students are, again, that barrier is reduced. So I think one of the examples that I really want to share out here, this is same with Andrew, I won't identify the institution, but we were seeing a huge uptick in flags from mentees that were unable to make appointments at the financial aid department. They just weren't able to connect. They'd show up and it would be full, and they'd go to make an appointment online and there wouldn't be slots available. And so they would just sort of not lose interest, but become discouraged. And so we shared this information with the financial aid department, and the solution that we came to was to create mentor collective participant specific office hours on a particular day of the week. And so for a couple of weeks at the beginning of each term, students had availability to go in. There would be a couple of counselors available. They could get their answers quickly. We were able to announce it through our communication tools, and make that partnership a little bit more solidified, and again, reduce the barrier to that information. So that's one of the ways in which we can directly leverage the information that's coming in from the mentor reports with a partner or a campus partner that might not be directly involved with the Mentor Collective platform at this point. The other things that I want to share out here are different ways that we can share out this data in a more consistent manner. So beyond just manually looking at things and combing through it and then sharing it when it comes up, we can set up a lot of automated options for data sharing. Number one is our flag routing. So we can route flags by topic, or we can route flags by student advisor or student contact. So if, let's say, for example, student advisors are done alphabetically, so students with last names A through C get advisor A, we can upload that into our dashboard. And so whenever a flag comes in for student A through C, they are routed directly to that particular advisor. We can also do that where I know I'm talking a lot about financial aid, but that's almost always top of mind here. So we can also route all financial aid flags directly to the financial aid office. Those flags would still come into your dashboard. You as the program admin would still get all of those emails, so you don't lose insight to that, but it ensures that the right department is getting the right content directly to them. Again, reducing some of the middlemen steps that are happening and making sure that students are getting what they need as soon as possible. Again, and also I want to reiterate that that also ensures that those relevant departments are getting that data as well. We don't always know who needs what when if they're not sharing that out and reporting, and then that gives that department greater insight into some of the trends that we're seeing. We can also set up a secure file transfer. Maybe throw in the chat if you have any of these set up already, whether it's flag routing or secure file transfer. We can do this both ways, where you all send us your lists in a secure, direct way. And we can also do secure file uploads directly into your LMS or CRM. So let's say you use, oh my gosh, I'm completely blanking on an example, but if you use Blackboard or that or I know it's a little bit more outdated, but there's a couple of different LMS systems where we can upload flag data or conversation data directly into your the sites that you use. So again, more folks have that information, and it's a little bit less manual. And we're always, always, always happy to have additional colleagues join our check-ins or schedule some additional time if we want to have conversations around how we can better incorporate your colleagues into the initiatives that you're building. Okay, I'll pause there. I know I'm talking a lot. Any questions or anything that's coming to mind before we move forward into some impact analysis questions or topics? Great. Great. And I love, Rose, that you've got your secure files. Yeah, and there are a lot of compliant IT options that we can accommodate. So that's a great call out too. Okay. Okay. So we have all of this data. We have some ideas around who we want to connect with on campus that can support those initiatives. If you can go to one more slide, Jen. Sorry, I did that twice now today. I keep calling you Jess, but you're Jen. So I just mentioned some of those data sharing options. The other piece of it, when we're thinking about evaluating for impact, did this program do what we intended it to do? Why did we originally partner, and are we moving the needle on those components? So I think the winter and spring are a great time for you and your partner success manager to take a minute, reconnect on why we're partnering together. What is it that your team is hoping to get out of mentorship? What is mentorship hoping to solve for? And are we collecting the right data to then evaluate for that? If we're thinking about retention, if we're thinking about term-to-term persistence, if we're thinking about academic performance or sense of belonging, are we getting the data that we need in order to look at, did we improve sense of belonging on campus? Are we seeing greater persistence for folks that are in the program? So the beginning of the new year is a great time to sort of reset, check in, make sure we're aligned and we have what we need. If there are additional data points that we need to collect, now is the time to start having those conversations. We know that sometimes setting up these meetings, getting in someone's priority queue can take some time. And so we really want to make sure we start having those conversations early and often. So this last bullet point here, I have identify the point of contact in your institutional research team. And that's really to make sure that if we want to evaluate for academic performance, we have the right folks on our side who can pull GPA reports or who can pull the drop rate for different students or withdrawal rates or things like that. So we want to start having those conversations. And again, please feel free to bring them into your check-ins so we can have collective conversations with all the parties. I'll also make a call out. We did a 3-part impact analysis webinar series in the fall, and they're all recorded and available to you in the Partner Knowledge Center. And I believe Jen will have that link for us in the chat. So again, that will go into more detail. And Jen, if actually you can go to one more slide ahead. This will give you a high-level overview of the general components that we would guide on to make sure that we're collecting the right data, we have all of the right parties in place in terms of performing that analysis and making sure that we can look at impact for the participants in this dashboard or in our dashboard. And then we can collectively report out on that to your leadership team and whoever else are relevant stakeholders. So again, I think the key areas here for our data is to identify, are we collecting the right data? Do you know where it lives? Is there anything else that we need to collaborate on? Can we leverage some additional tools like the micro survey? And who do we need to identify on campus that can support with campus resources and looking at some of these impact areas, and how can we perform that analysis together so we can present out on the incredible work that you're all doing. So this is quite a summary. I know we flew by that, but I hope that this is helpful and a good launching pad for you to have some of these conversations with your partner success manager who can guide you through all of this in a lot more detail. And I think with that, I'll hand it back over to Jen.